Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel. I've got a lovely Bigfoot encounter for you, and it comes all the way from rural Mississippi. So let's get started. Dear Sarah and all your listeners, I have always kept my mouth shut about my Bigfoot experience, and I was never going to tell anyone about it. But your assurance of keeping my name truly anonymous really now gives me a voice, and for that I truly appreciate it. So many, many thanks. My story happened in central Mississippi. I want to keep my details as vague as possible if you do not mind. Our house was literally parked in the woods. We live in timber country with lots of red dirt roads around and plenty of thick brush with lots and lots of trees. To put it bluntly, we really are in the middle of nowhere, and our nearest neighbor is a couple of miles away. I grew up in the 1970s, and life then was so much less complicated in those days. My sister and I had a brilliant childhood. My sister's name was Alice, but to tell you the truth, most of the time she felt like a brother to me because she was an outdoor, very boyish sort of person and one of the most courageous people I have ever known, and I hasten to say she still is today. Alice and I spent countless hours in the forest because it was alive with animals, and it was always fun to just go exploring and watching the deer drinking at the creek. Even though our farm is very vast and has ample acreage and huge areas of forest and wood, I had learnt to navigate the area well because my father had been a great hunter and had taught me how to hunt. One day my sister and I decided to venture further into the woods because we wanted to find a special place to go and play, and there was a lot of unexplored territory on our land, which made it very exciting for us. I was lucky because my father trusted me to take care of Alice, being the boy of the family, and they were pretty easygoing about us wandering off and exploring. So one beautiful, warm and sunny day, Alice and I ventured into the woods. It was unusual because we expected to hear birds chirping and to see the odd squirrel or chipmunk or even deer crossing our path, but nothing of the kind. The ambience of the forest seemed eerily quiet, which was weird, to say the least, because I'd never known it like this before. Finally, Alice and I stumbled upon this beautiful stream where the water flowed over the boulders and made a wonderful gushing sound. It was really magnificent, and I was surprised I had not discovered it before. I was also dumbfounded to see that there was no deer drinking the crisp, beautiful water, and there wasn't even a dragonfly in sight, which from our neck of the woods was particularly unusual. That is how quiet it was. Alice wasted no time. She pulled up her pants to above her knees and started to paddle in the cool, crisp water. I tore off my shoes and rushed into the water to join her. We then went and sat on the rocky ledge where we watched the water gushing over the pebbles. It was Alice who started to throw pebbles into the water, and I followed her lead. We would make secret wishes every time we threw a pebble in the water. "I'll make a wish for you," said Alice, picking up a smooth stone and throwing it into the water. "Shh," I whispered. "Did you hear that?" We heard a sound of chattering in the distance. It sounded like people talking in a strange language, which was very odd because there was no one on our land, or put it this way, no one who should have been on our land. I decided to tease Alice. "The woods are haunted," I teased her. "Maybe it's ghost voices." I should not have wasted my time because Alice shrugged and proceeded to throw more pebbles into the water. "I'm not afraid of ghosts," she said. "Even if I see one, I don't think I'd be that worried, you know. It wouldn't bother me that much." I was disappointed. There was no teasing Alice. She just did not scare. She was braver than I was, and I'd always known it, so I wasn't going to have any fun riling her up. Suddenly we heard the sounds of owls quite close to where we were sitting. But the weird thing was that it sounded like they were answering each other, because the tones were so different, but they were definitely owl calls. "Did you hear that?" whispered Alice. "Who would have thought that we would get owls calling during the day? We have not heard any bird calls until now, and then we hear owls in the middle of the day. You've got to admit that's really weird." Another thing I'd like to mention is we also had smelt a pungent odor in the air. Alice described it as skunk-like and putrid, but I felt the mixture was the smell was a mixture of dead animal and urine altogether. We did look around for the source of the smell, but we could not find where it was coming from, and really we were not going to let this ruin our fun. We must come back here tomorrow, Alice begged me. We'll bring a picnic lunch. It'll be so, so fun. The next day, Alice and I diligently returned to the beautiful creek. On our way there, we did once again not see any sign of a rabbit or a fleeting deer. It was incredibly quiet, which is unusual for our property. We also noticed that some tree branches had been snapped on the route that we took to the stream. Look at these branches that have been snapped, I said, pointing to some of the tree breaks that we had not noticed the day before. They looked as if they had only been recently snapped. Alice did not make a comment. I do not think it bothered her at all, or she just didn't care. Her focus was returning to our new secret place, the beautiful stream we had found the previous day. I have to say it was a magnificent day. It was warm and beautiful, but not too hot, which is the way that Alice and I both like it. We both paddled in the cool water and proceeded to throw pebbles in the deeper end of the stream as we sat on a couple of large boulders. Once again we played our wishing game, but we spoke our wishes out aloud this time. I wish I'd never have to grow up, sighed Alice. I want to be young forever, because then we don't have to ever do anything but play and have fun, no responsibilities like Mum and Dad. It was at that moment I remember when we saw a pebble being flung towards us, narrowly missing Alice's shoulder and landing perfectly in the water. I was stunned. Several more pebbles were thrown at us, but with such precision it was uncanny, and from a fair distance, I might add. I mean, who on earth can throw a pebble from such a distance? I knew that I couldn't. Who on earth can throw a pebble like that? Gasped Alice in surprise. That was a brilliant shot. Yes, but who's throwing them? Alice pondered for a while and then giggled. I bet you it's Ernest, she said. Maybe he's not so boring after all. Perhaps he does have a sense of humour. I thought he was a stick in the mud. Ernest was my father's brother's son, who was about 7 years older than us. And he was a kind of person that just liked to read books all day and never venture outside. He appeared to us to be studious and boring. I tried to agree with Alice, but in my heart I just knew that Ernest would never be able to throw a pebble with such precision like that. Cut it out, Ernest, we know it's you, Alice shouted out. Come on from your hiding place. Come and join us. We've got a picnic here. Come on, Ernest, out you come. For a long while we were all quiet. The pebble throwing had stopped and everything was silent again. He's a spoil sport, sighed Alice. He's not going to show himself. Typical. Well, let's go and enjoy our picnic, said Alice, returning to the bank where our basket was filled with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, banana bread, and icy cold lemonade. I'm famished, I said eagerly as we darted over the rocks to our picnic stash. But when we got there, the basket was completely empty. Everything was gone, apart from a couple of paper napkins that were wrinkled. Alex looked shocked, and then she became cross. It's one thing to throw pebbles at us, she snapped, but to steal our picnic, now that's mean. Once again Alice shouted out into the forest, Come on out, Ernest. Give us our picnic back now. We know what you're doing. The forest answered us with our calls, and so Alice and I started to investigate where they were coming from. I know you're there, Ernest, Alice called. I'm going to find you. You'll not get away with this. Wait until I tell Mum and Dad what you've done. Alice was looking into the forest for any signs of our cousin, but suddenly she froze, and then she pushed me fiercely. We're going now, she demanded. We need to get out of here fast, she snapped, pushing me so hard that I nearly fell over. I obeyed Alice without even thinking twice about it, because her face told me everything. I'd never seen such fear written in her eyes, and Alice did not rattle easily. Walk fast, she demanded, and do not look behind you, and do not run. As we were walking, I could feel terror rising up in my chest. Maybe Alice had seen a panther or something, I thought. I could tell we were being stalked, because I could hear the sounds of leaves rustling under feet from behind us, and I would occasionally hear a tree branch just snap. This was beyond weird. When we got home, I just breathed a huge sigh of relief. Alice looked at me intently. Did you see it? She said. Did you see that thing that was following us? What thing? I asked. I didn't see anything. I don't know, she said. But it was huge. I'm not kidding, like a real live monster. It was dark, dark black. It was hairy. But it wasn't a bear. I can't explain. It looked like a man, like an ape. It was hairy and ugly, and there were others too. I could see them. They were the ones that threw pebbles at us. It wasn't Ernest. They were the ones that stole our food. And they were the ones that made owl calls during the day. It all makes sense now. We must tell Mum and Dad now, I said. Dad can kill that horrible thing. You will not tell Dad anything. Are you crazy? He'll stop us from ever going into the forest again, and that's not going to happen. Understand? I reluctantly agreed. It was a while before Alice and I ventured into the forest again, but when we did, we always made sure that we could hear the bugs and the animals, and then we knew that those horrible things were not around. If ever the forest had no sign of movement, we would keep our distance, and that did happen from time to time. We never knew what the monster was, because in those days we'd never ever heard of Sasquatch. But all these years later, I am convinced we encountered that mythical creature called Bigfoot. So I'm a believer. Thank you, Sarah, for letting me tell my story. And thank your listeners for listening. Until next time, good night.